Hi, it's Steph, and today I'm going to share with you my most used and favorite gardening tools. Before we get into the video, I just wanted to say thank you so much to all of my subscribers, old and new. I typically don't ask, but in my last video I asked if you could subscribe and like the content if you found it informative or entertaining. And you did. You liked my video. I've gotten some subscribers, so it seems like I had a good response. So I just wanted to take a second to thank you for that. It really does help my channel grow, and I do this for fun, but if I'm doing the video, I really would love more people to see it. So thanks again. Now, let's get into the tools that I prefer to use in my garden. So I've been gardening for about 10 years now, and over the years you accumulate quite an arsenal of tools. Some of them are helpful, some of them, as you start using them, realize aren't as good as you thought they would be. So I'm just going to share with you what my favorites are and the things that I always find myself reaching for when I'm doing work in my own garden. Now, before we get started, I just want to let you know that I've purchased all of these items with my own money. I'm not sponsored, so I have no motive to tell you this other than these are items that I've purchased and I really enjoy in my garden, so I'm sharing them with you. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is my hoses and my sprayers. Now, we're in my vegetable garden, and while I do have irrigation in here, before I knew any better, we set up the irrigation with sprayers. And I would love to convert them to drip, but we haven't gotten around to that yet. Now, if you have your system set up as spraying and it sprays your foliage, you're more likely to get disease, which is why I want to convert it to drip. But in the meantime, I've been hand watering, which is a little bit more work, but with these tools, it's been a little bit easier. So this is my hose that I'm using. This is called a 0G, and I bought this at Lowe's. They come in two lengths, a 50 foot and a 100 foot. They might even come in a 75. But I have in my vegetable garden a 50 footer, and out in my other yard, the rest of the yard, I have two 100 footers, a front one and a back one. And what I like about this hose is that it's very lightweight. I've had the traditional rubber hoses in the past, and compared to those, this one is amazing. So I really like it for ease of dragging it around the garden. The other thing that I really enjoy are these nozzles. Now, this is an Orbitz one. I also bought it at Lowe's, and what I like about this is only last year did I discover these hose spray nozzles that have this lever instead of the traditional trigger. The reason I really like these types of hose sprayers is because you don't get as much fatigue on your hand if you're spraying there, if you're standing there spraying for an extended period of time. So if I was out here watering my vegetable garden, I would just have to adjust this lever once and begin watering. Besides liking the lever, I also like the fact that this sprayer has multiple different settings. Now, I use mostly as the shower setting, and I also like the mist setting. But if I was going to go ahead and water my vegetable garden on this shower setting, I have to bend and get real low so that I make sure I don't wet any of the foliage, which is the whole reason I am not using my irrigation at the moment. So I would get down here and I would water at the root base of my plant. And while this might not be a surprise to many of you, and I've seen people at Home Depot and Lowe's in the garden center use these all the time, it never occurred to me to buy a watering wand. But now that I have one, I love it. So what's great about this one is the length of this hose sprayer. So without having to get really low, I can water things down low and up high. So for example, I can get right to the root and base of my plants without having to even bend over now, which is so much better on your back. Which, if you've been gardening for a while, anything that helps save your back is key. This is also great if you have things like hanging baskets that are up high that would be more difficult to do with a watering can or a traditional hose sprayer. And this watering wand was super inexpensive. It was about $10, and they sell them at both Home Depot and Lowe's. And I'll find the link and I'll place it below in the description of the video. But what's really great too, and why it was so inexpensive, is it just has one setting. It's just a rain shower head, so it has a nice gentle stream of water. And you can adjust the water flow by the lever. Next, we're going to talk about kneeling pads. Now, first is this guy. I find myself reaching for him the least because it's a little bit more cumbersome, but it is helpful. If you have some trouble kneeling down or just want a little bit of help when you're getting back up, you just put this stand down or this kneeling pad and it helps you kneel. And once you've been down here for a while, it gets a little harder to get up, and that's where these come into play because you can just put your weight on them and easily get up. So while helpful, it's just not one that I reach for very often. They do sell these on Amazon. I can look for it and link it below if you're interested. And yeah, so that's that one. Also, it can serve as a seat. So say you wanted to sit and do some deadheading or pruning, you could actually just sit on this kneeling pad and you can do whatever you have to do. So it is very helpful and multifunctional, just not my favorite. Nothing against the last kneeling pad, it's just a little bulkier and this style is just easier for me to grab and go. Now, these are two different types of kneeling pads that you probably most likely see out on the market. There's this one that's a little bit thinner, and then there's this one that I recently found a couple of years ago that is nice and thick. So my preference is this nice and thick one. It's made by Gorilla. I'll link it below, and it's so much more comfortable. Now, if you're just kneeling on grass, it's not that big a deal, but if you're on, say, a harder surface, this one is gonna be so much more cushiony for your knees, and just like overall just way nicer feeling. And in the hand tool category, these are my favorites. Here I have my Felco 2 pruners and my Corona steel tip floral snips. These are really good hand tools and they're my favorite. They're always my grab and goes along with my kneeling pad when I'm going out to the garden to do any work. These Felcos are a little bit of an investment at around the $60 price point, but if you take care of them and don't lose them, they can last you a really long time. And these are only about 10 bucks, and both of them can be found on Amazon, and I can link that below for you. My Felco 2s are good for pruning things that are a little bit thicker, say roses, for example, or shrubs, where these floral snips would be really good for deadheading plants like perennials. Bonus tip, when you're working with your hand tools, it's especially important to disinfect them between plants. Things like Japanese maples or roses, for example, are really susceptible to disease, so it's important to disinfect your tools between plants. So I just keep this small bottle of isopropyl alcohol, and this is just a recycled bottle of face toner. But you can even buy a plastic bottle like this in the travel section at the store, and you keep some alcohol in it and keep it on yourself when you're working with your pruners, and between plants, just go ahead and spray them to disinfect them. Well, it's starting to drizzle, but that's okay because we really need the rain. It actually feels good. Okay, so another useful item that I use in the garden a lot is these pop-up bags. So whenever I go deadhead items, I usually bring this along so that I can collect all of my debris. And this one's by Fiskars, but a bunch of different companies make them. You can find them pretty easily. And what I like about this one is that there's these buttons on the side so I can fold them up for storage in my shed, which is really helpful. And they just pop open, and they're really lightweight, and they are really good for catching all of the things that you're pruning off of your plants. Another hand tool that I find really useful is this cultivator. You can buy these really inexpensively. This one, for example, was just about $5 at Walmart, and I've seen them range from about $5 to $15. The reason I really like this is that it's really helpful to break up soil. Whether you have rocky or sandy soil, it's very useful. So basically this toe part helps you start the hole, and this rake helps break everything up. So really great tool for planting. Another hand tool that I'm finding is really useful is this one, and it's called a Hori Hori. This is newer to me. I just added this to my tool collection this year, and I'm really enjoying it so far. So the things that I've been using this for are for cutting weeds, things that have roots that get really gnarly. This has a sharper edge like a serrated knife, and it's helpful to cut those. It also has a gauge on here that shows you measurements, so you can see how deep a hole is if you're planting. I've also been using this to divide perennials. This serrated edge makes it really nice to cut through smaller perennials. And also I've been finding this useful for planting seedlings. So here I have a small sunflower seedling. So you just take your Hori Hori and you insert it into the soil, and you just kind of move it around. And now I can take my small seedling and just place it into the hole and move my soil back. So I haven't had to dig out a shovel or anything, and my seedling is planted. So Hori Hori, really useful. Shovels, what can I say? They dig holes. But really, there's a couple of shovels that I really enjoy using in my garden. So this one specifically is called a D-handle spade shovel. It's by Fiskars, and we found it really useful for different tasks in the garden, specifically for either dividing larger perennials. So I could use my hori that I showed you for something that's smaller, but this would be really good if you needed to go through the center of a larger perennial. It's also really great for edging because of this flat edge. And the other thing we've used this a lot for, specifically this year, is for lifting sod. Because it is nice and sharp and flat, it's really great to get underneath sod to lift it. I know I've shown this before, but for taking out sod only and trying to keep as much of your loam as possible, you just use like a flat shovel and dig underneath, essentially like scraping the layer of grass out as finely as you can, and that way you can recycle the sod if you need to patch other areas up in the yard.
And you're not losing dirt.
Yeah, and you're not losing dirt because you're making it nice and thin. The other shovel that I've been really enjoying is this long handle digging shovel. I had a couple of shovels before, but not one with a long handle like this. And honestly, it's great because it gives you a lot of leverage when you're digging holes. And because I already liked this one in the Fiskars brand, I went ahead and bought another one. These are all steel, and they say they have a lifetime warranty. The other really great feature of these is that they have this really large step at the bottom, which really helps when you're pressing your shovel into the soil and also gives you additional leverage when digging. Both of these shovels actually have the same platform. If you want information on any of these tools that I showed in the video today, I'm going to put some links below in the description of the video for you to check out, from Amazon and from Home Depot and Lowe's. On the topic of using shovels for edging, there's this tool that is specific for edging. It's an edger, and they have this half moon shape. Now, I've had another one in the past that was smooth, but the game changer with this one is that it's serrated, so it's actually a lot more efficient in creating nice, sharp edges. So I'm really enjoying this one, and it has the two handles, which makes it really nice ergonomically to get down into the soil. Well, that was my list for my frequently used items. These are things that I use on a really regular basis. We all have those things in the shed, like the post hole digger or other things that we use on an occasional basis, but these are the frequent flyers. Do you have anything in your garden tools that you use on a frequent basis? Comment below. Let's keep the conversation going so that maybe we can all discover a new tool that we can use in our garden. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.